Bismillahirrahmanirrahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love, y'all. I'm Brother Ali, and the Travelers Podcast is back. I'm back. We're back. BK1 is back, the producer of the podcast, and you're back. And maybe you never left. The reality is that we just switched our format for the past 6 weeks. But when we're back to our traditional format, and maybe you're brand new here, we have a guest like Slug from Atmosphere. You get some people that are brand new to the podcast. And if that's the case, I actually envy you because there's like 60 episodes that are around an hour and a half or 2 hours long for you to just dive into and start swimming in. And this is a beautiful, really dope kind of universe that we're building and creating here. I guess if you're brand new, like if this is an entirely new thing to you, I'm Brother Ali. I'm an albino from the Midwest. I grew up on hip hop in the 90s. I converted to Islam when I was 15 years old and became an imam in that community in kind of like inner city Islam. And then also, I've been an underground independent hip hop artist for the last 20 years with varying degrees of struggle and success. And I've along the way also done a lot of community and political organizing and activism. And so we've done a lot and achieved a lot of really great things. I've also been in a lot of trouble with this particular mixture of things that I do. Been really harassed by Department of Homeland Security and the FBI and all of that. And I've also been blessed to travel around the world with and perform and make music with my heroes. And if you're a hip hop head, then they're also your heroes. And I've also really benefited from these incredible wisdom and spiritual teachers and leaders that I've been with. So I've lived an amazing life, and I'm exploring life on this podcast with the co-travelers on this journey who are incredible people. So this podcast is me sitting down and talking usually for like 2 hours to everybody from like hip hop icons like Chuck D and Pharoah Monch and Slug from Atmosphere and Sa Rock and Vinny Paz and Immortal Technique and Ari the Rugged Man and Merce and Sage Francis. And the list goes on and on and on. Maymuna Yusuf, Open Mike Eagle, Tef Poe, incredible human beings, Jasiri X, really incredible artists and incredible human beings. I also talk to thought leaders and educators like Dr. Cornel West. We talked to Ilhan Omar, Congresswoman. We talked to Jane Elliott, who's the old school white school teacher who did the blue eyes, brown eyes exercise and just gives America the uncut truth about race in America. She threatened to beat me at one point, like punish me. She threatened to jump my bones if I ever came to her house, like had a dope conversation with her. I talk to my friends who are amazing comedians like Hassan Minhaj and Mo Amer and Azhar Usman. And I have really dope conversations with people who you might not know right away, but the people in their world know of them as absolute legends. So now you got this whole ocean to dive into. And I'm really grateful and fortunate to be able to be part of bringing this to the world. And this week, we have one of my best friends in life, one of my dearest mentors and big brothers, and just confidants, and somebody that I look to for inspiration, Slug from Atmosphere, who is a universe unto himself. And this is his third appearance on the podcast. And I had to invite Slug back because Atmosphere is dropping this incredible album called So Many Other Realities Exist Simultaneously. I think that's the name of it. I still have to like look at it written down. But I, as somebody who's been an Atmosphere fan, one of the biggest Atmosphere fans for 25 years, am so inspired and excited by this album that I had to ask my man Sean to come back, and you'll hear us talk a lot about the album as we go. And he really opens up as he always does with us, and I'm very, very grateful to have him here. And I also want to say at the beginning of this episode, whether you're new here or you've been here for a while, the best way to communicate with me and with us and to be part of this podcast and part of the music that we continue to release. A lot of the music that we're releasing now is completely independent and it's in small batches. It's like limited edition, very, very special, really intimate releases. The best way to be part of all of this is to go to brotherali.com and sign the mailing list and go to the section called Join. Because on that section called Join, we have what we call a Caravan, which is our community of supporters that are really, really locked in. And there's different tiers and different levels at which you can commit. But I want you to know that there's a $5 level, a very, very basic level that we really are investing a lot into. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But this $5 level, we have all kinds of exclusive music and conversations and videos, stuff that you're not going to find online, things that are rare, things that are very, very difficult to track down, some things you just can't get anywhere else. And if you go to brotherali.com, go to the section called join and sign up at that $5 level, you will perpetually have access to it all. We're brought to you from the very beginning of this podcast since day one by the Zakat Foundation. If you go to Zakat US on social media, you'll see all of this incredible worldwide global humanitarian work that they do. And if you go to Zakat, ZAKAT.org, you'll be able to get down with them right away. This is an organization that I know and trust. And I host this podcast from Turkey, which was just rocked by historical, catastrophic earthquakes. And it just so happens that Zakat Foundation, the head of the organization, lives in Chicago, but he's originally from Turkey. And Zakat Foundation has offices and teams on the ground in Turkey. So if you've already been contributing, then you should feel good that you already were tapped into an organization that can really help and provide real aid and resources for people that are suffering this tragedy. And if you're not already part of that, you can go right now to zakat.org and put something on that earthquake relief and know that what you're giving to is an organization that you can trust and that is really, really set up to impact people. And the money that you give is going to really touch people's lives immediately. So thank you for entering into this world. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking around. Make yourself comfortable. Enjoy this episode of me talking to my incredible big brother, Slug from Atmosphere. So this album, the first time that I heard it was the last time that we recorded the two episodes for this podcast.
Yeah.
We had one on stage and then we had one that we did in a hotel. And then you had come to Madison for that, which was super generous of you, and it was really dope. And that was the last day of my tour.
Yep.
And so we were going back to Minneapolis, and instead of flying, you decided to bring your son and to just drive back and forth. And so I was like, cool. So I rode back with you. So we hung out for a few days. And then on the way back, you played me the album. You played me this album. And I remember feeling like, this is the most amazing thing that I've heard in years from you or anybody else. Like it was just, and then in the almost year time since then, I started thinking to myself, like, I wonder how much of that was the moment and how much of it was just hanging out with you. Because one of the things about you is that when you kick it with Sean for long enough, you start feeling, it doesn't take long. You come into your world, like you literally come into this universe that's just yours. And in that universe, it all makes such complete sense. So I was wondering, like, how much of it was just the fact that I was so happy to see my friend. I'm getting the feeling and the vibe of everything. And so it's been a year since I heard it. But then coming back to it and revisiting it, it's every bit the amazing testament and body of music and art and commentary on your life and the life of the world and the life of, your version of Minneapolis and what's happened in the last few years. And it's really incredible, man. It really feels like a moment. I just have to start with the fact that I'm really listening to you completely as a fan again. So this record is it's just incredible. And so I want to start with, do you have the same feeling? By the time you put a record out, you've already got another record done. So like you're constantly moving. Do you feel the way that I feel about so many other realities exist? Like, do you feel the same way about it?
Um, that's a great question. The best way to answer that would be, sometimes.
Mhm.
Sometimes I feel that way. Sometimes also I'm over it, and it's not even just that we've moved on and made more music, but it's also like once you do it, once you complete something, once you communicate something, and remember when I write, okay, so just for context, I'm by myself. I sit here all alone for at least 90%. We could say maybe Anthony is in the room for maybe 10% of what gets written, but for 90%, I'm all by myself, so I'm kind of allowed to say anything. I can go I can do anything. I can make any song I want to make. I can write about anything I want to make because nobody else is there. Nobody can hear it. It's just me, I could be just mad ignorant and do some just real wild stuff or I could say the most sensitive stuff I got in me. It's so I use that opportunity to do those things. And then when I write something that I feel like is good, then I show it to Anthony. And that is now that layer of vulnerability that's the real vulnerability. Being vulnerable by yourself is one gift, but to be able to do that in front of others that's a whole different thing. So when it's time to show Anthony what I did, if it passes the Anthony test, if he reacts to it, if he laughs, if he flinches, if he has any reaction, then I know, okay, good, this is human. And I'm only able to I couldn't have articulated this for you a few years ago. This is kind of new stuff for me. So I'm getting a chance to say some things to you and your audience that I haven't really gotten a chance to practice in front of a lot of people. Feel me? So I'm just kind of going there. So once I get through that, if it passes his test, then I know I could show this to anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, because if he stops me and goes, I don't know about this one, then I know, oh, okay, good. So he's kind of like a part of me, a filter for my voice before my voice gets heard by others. So when making this one, I didn't have that option of being like, okay, this one I'm going to set aside. Nobody's going to hear this one, or I'm going to throw this one away. Because we tried to force ourselves to create and make and keep everything that we were making. So when going through all of that to make this album, it was an interesting way for me to resolve things that I'd been thinking about. It was an interesting way for me to approach and speak and be vulnerable because I felt like even from the beginning, I have to immediately know at least Anthony's going to hear this,
Mm-hmm.
And it challenged me. It made me want to step up rhyming a little bit more. It made me want to step up not just concepts, but the way I do concepts. I used to do real hard concepts. I'd be like, here's what I'm going to rhyme about, and I would just be real specific.
Right.
I was able to get a little more obtuse with it as years went by. Now I'm trying to find this blend of the two so that I am on a hard concept, but I'm also making sure you have an opportunity to come up with your own picture of what this looks like. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a challenge, but it's really fun to think in those terms when writing rhymes,
Yeah.
So all of that to say, it started August of 2020. That's when we first started making this project.
Crazy.
So now here we are in spring, supposedly, of 2023, and I have written more stuff,
Mm-hmm.
So when I hear this, which I'm hearing it a lot now because we're practicing and getting ready for the touring that we're going to be doing. And so I'm hearing these songs and I'm finding my approach to how to really deliver them live the way I want to and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of forcing me to like really kind of it's forcing me to like really look at what these songs were, what they meant. Do I still mean them? Do I have to reapply myself to them in certain ways? Because some of your older material, you might not feel like that anymore. So you got to come up with new ways to do it live. And so
Right.
So when you're going through some new material that nobody's ever heard, and you still have that feeling of like, okay, how am I gonna flip this to make this feel like today? It's interesting. So it's a weird relationship. Again, to answer your question, Sometimes I hear it and I'm just like, wow, this is really, to quote Ant, the best thing that we could make in that moment. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is us really doing our best to provide what it is, who we are, what we've been through.
Yeah.
But also, I gotta say, sometimes I hear some of this stuff and I'm over it.
Mm.
Like, oh, I can't wait. I can't wait till people hear the new shit. But they haven't even heard this one yet, And so I'm excited though, man, because it's coming out very shortly. And I want to see how people react to it. I'm going to break my rules and probably read some comments, you know what I'm saying? For better, for worse. I want to see how people take this one because this one is what we put into the making of this.
Yeah.
All the challenges we set up for ourselves, me and Anthony, what we put into this, our craft this time around. I want to see if people notice. I wanna see if they hear what I know is in there, you know?
Yeah, it's a trip, like, one of the things that's so inspirational for me is, like, anybody that's been doing this for as long as we've been doing it, as long as y'all have been doing it, that have put out as much music as you have, sometimes you hit a pocket where an artist has made a statement or, like, y'all have made several statements, and sometimes it takes a minute, like, an artist needs to if they're gonna keep progressing and evolving and searching themselves and searching, like, exploring the art form, which a real artist always does. There's a growth period that you just have to allow as a listener, as like a fan, for an artist to find something. You might get a few records that like, oh, this artist is exploring right now. Like if you listen to Yassine Bey in between the Ecstatic and those albums and the new Black Star album, there was a whole period where like you go to his shows and you don't know what you're gonna get. And if you go and click on something that he rhymed on, you have no idea what it's gonna be. And the more strange and hard to wrap your mind around it is, the better because you're like, yo, it's like there's an artist in there that's trying to figure something new out. And so for this one to feel so like focused, and it really does feel like there's something that you and Ant felt ready to share, you know? So there's something about that feels really good for me that like, man, to hear you delivering what you are throughout the course of this record, man, it's there's something about it that feels really victorious. It feels like the culmination of the past several albums in terms of the styles of music, the types of production, it really feels like all of the things that you guys have been exploring and curating. There's music on this record that sounds like straight up like Kraftwerk, Africa Bambaataa meets Depeche Mode, like, you know what I mean? The things that remind me of the Halloween record. It's almost like those things were an exploration to be able to reach this moment with the right combination of music and styles and the right capturing the right mood and the right moment. It really feels to me like those last few albums, for as great as they were, like they were leading up to this in a lot of ways. Like, do you understand what I'm does that make sense?
I do, and I appreciate you saying that, I'm grateful that you hear that. I feel like, one of the things that I've noticed about this is that we continuously come up with something that drives us for a project, and it's outside of the concept. The concept, whatever I wanna write or wherever he's trying to go musically, that's obvious, but there's also we'll make a rule.
Mhm.
We'll come up with some sort of code that we have to crack.
Yes.
So, what I think that does is and I can't even tell you why or how that started, but I do know it's been going on for a long time. You know, it's
Yeah.
just been a weird thing that him and we got onto, and then we just never stopped doing that part. And I think that is the line, the linear piece that goes through all of our music that ties them all together. So when you do ever hear anything like as electric sounding as the Halloween album and then compare it to something like the Family Sign album,
Right.
those are very entirely different sounds and different ways of even approaching the rapping, everything. But the line that holds them together is the fact that, well, they came up with a code to crack, and this is their version of cracking that code, you know? And every time you do that, it's not like you unlearn what you just picked up.
Mhm.
It just goes into your bag, the bag that you carry into the next time you sit down to make art. And so when you open that bag up and you start digging in that bag, you have all these things that you've already done. You don't want to just pick them up and imitate them, but it would be it would be inconsiderate to yourself to not at least dig around in that bag and go, "Oh, I used this brush once for this. Let me see what happens if I use it like this or something." You know what I'm saying? It's like so you don't unlearn these things. You carry them and then you just learn more and new things. So every time you crack a code, you have different ways of picking locks. You know what I mean? And so like you apply all those, moving
Mhm.
forward. You know, for instance, the Halloween record probably definitely informed a song on here called Thanxiety and another one called Talk Talk.
Yes.
And then what we did with those 2 songs informed some of the next project that we've been working on, and so on and so forth, there's stuff that we did on the Word album that I would say inform bits and pieces on this particular album, there's stuff that was on Felt 4 that informed some of the stuff on this album, and I
Mhm.
just think that, specifically lyrically, there was a couple of, like, I did some fun stuff on Felt 4 that was outside of normal atmosphere, take yourself too serious music, you know what I'm saying? And brought some of that to the table, and I just think every time, like, I don't think we are trying to reinvent anything. And I don't think that we are trying to outdo anybody or compete with anybody but ourselves,
Yeah.
you know? We are the only thing that we have to really reinvent is ourselves. The only thing we have to really compete with or outdo is ourselves, and I don't mean that arrogantly.
No.
I mean that as I think it's just a real pure way to approach art. It's a way that you can actually be your own critic. So much of art gets criticized by people outside of you, don't even know you. Some of them don't even make art. You know what I'm saying? And that's all good. Everybody has that ability, and opinions are beautiful.
Mhm.
But you should always be able to be your most important critic should be you. You know what I'm saying? You should be able to look at your own stuff with a critical eye and ask yourself, like, do I believe in this? What was the intention? What did I do? How did I how am I impressing myself today? You know what I mean? Like, what am I doing to impress myself right now?
Mhm.
I have no idea if that speaks to your question. I got a little lost in there,
No,
sorry.
absolutely. No, 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 absolutely. And it's ill like when you see like a great actor, for example, you see somebody like Denzel crush a role, and then they just do amazingly, and like suddenly they're on everybody's radar. And then you see them almost have to battle with being typecast, where it's like, oh, now the industry knows that you can do this. And but if they are able to be around long enough and they start to play completely different types of roles. So you see Malcolm X and you see him in Training Day and you see him as in Glory and you see all of these different, it's like those things are so different that they actually reveal something about who Denzel the man is, like who the artist is,
Yes.
when you start to see the through line of all of those. And so being able to hear you and Ant make so many different types of music over such a expanded period of time, you start to see though that there is something very, very solid. Like there's always a core that's there in all the different types of music or the different rules that you establish for yourself. And you start learning like who Anthony is. There are certain things that when you hear all of them, it's like, no, Anthony Jerome Davis made that. You know what I mean? Or like that's Sean, that's Sean. It's there's actually something really revealing in that when you stretch it out like that and go in so many different directions artistically. That's really beautiful.
Mm.
Artists, it's easy to fall into certain vocal things that we do. And like I definitely had a period where I was really leaning on certain things that I do. And there's like a vocal thing that you did for like the last 4 albums where you would get high, like your voice would crack. I used to think that I was so da 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 da. Like it was like on the second or third listen where I'm like, "Oh, man, he doesn't do that one time on this record."
It's 'cause of you.
You know what I'm saying?
It's 'cause of you that I don't do that on this
Oh, did
record.
I say that to you?
Yeah, you said something, one of the older records I sent you, and you sent me back a very kind review of it, and when I say kind, I don't mean you were nice about what you said, but it was kind of you to even take the time to write, and you wrote about it, or maybe you said it in your phone, I can't remember, but anyway, you responded with a review, and you had pointed out, like, "Hey, I noticed that your voice has been crackling, and you do it on this record a lot," and I was like, "Oh, man, I have been," and I had to go, "Why?" It's like usually when you do that, you pause and you retake it. You don't keep it. And so I told Ant, "Why is this happening?" Or I asked him, I was like, "Why do I keep doing this?" And he was like, "Oh, because one time I told you I liked it." And I was like, "Okay." And he
Mhm.
was like, "And ever since I told you I liked it, you do it too much." And I was like, "Oh, okay. So let's get out of it." And so now I was more conscious of it because it's one of those things where it's like, all right, so I record right here where I'm at right now. Raise the mic and go. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I know for this 8 bars right here, I want it to elevate and get busier. And so you throw it down and you go, oh, that's pretty good. I could do it even better. I can give it more intensity, or I can make sure that there's a feeling there. And so when I figured out how to, I don't want to say accidentally because I knew I was conscious of it, but when I figured out how to make my voice strain, it became a it just became a technique
Yeah,
or almost like it became a part of the process,
yeah.
and to be like, well, I want it to happen on bar 6 because I don't want to get in the way of Ant's change up, his build up to the change, or you find the place where, and now suddenly you're Quincy Jones in it into certain spots. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're going, oh, I'm gonna
Right,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I was not even fully conscious of how often it was happening. And so I was like, oh, well, I can't take them back. They're already out there. But I put effort into not doing it on this album. And I don't want to, for fun, I want to say I did that for you. But the truth is, I think that when you had said that to me, it made me realize, oh, and then when I went and I opened up the realization with Anthony, it just made it bigger for me and made me question, okay, so why am I doing that, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's not like you're never going to hear my voice crack ever again. But now I think I'll be more present and more aware of like going, okay, this is how that's supposed to be used. But I would never be like, oh, it was totally accidental. I'm not trying to crack my voice. I'm sure at the beginning it was accidental because Ant would just be like, nah, keep it, because he doesn't want to see me take a fifth take at the verse. You know what I'm saying? Now, once he was like, oh, I like that. I like how it feels desperate. I think that's the word he used, and I fell for it. I was just like, oh, desperate. I like desperate. Anytime I want desperate, I'm gonna crack my voice. Yeah.
Man, the time that it, and we talked about this song on the last time that we talked on the podcast, but the time when I heard you say it is was on Flickr when you said, "I want to help my friend." Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like there, and that was a real desperate, like there was no calculation to that.
And
Like that was
that's probably the one that made Ant go, I like that. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know if I
yeah,
was
because it's a goosebump moment. It's just a like, oh my God, like the man, this is really
yeah.
this is real. This is a human thing that's happening. You know, I did the same thing around the same time. Um, like on the Us album, I had a song that I was making, and it was like really breathy, and like I was doing this thing. And then that's the last. Then I stopped making that music with Ant for a couple records, like I did with Jake One and some other stuff. And I started. I would the same thing. Like that's why I knew it, because like when I listen to Morning in America, the album I made with Jake One, and then some of the stuff I did around that, I hear myself performatively doing things that I had just like authentically done on the last record I did with Ant, and being like, "Oh, this is my style now."
Because
You know
people,
what I
well,
mean?
Ant reacted, and that's
Right.
he's my kryptonite. If he reacts to something, that's it. You know what I mean? Like because I trust him. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I do
Yeah.
think that maybe
Yes.
he probably got over it like early and just never said stop doing that. You know what I'm saying? Like because he doesn't mind that I don't do it. You know what I mean? And when we had to talk about it, he was just like, "Oh, I think I told you I liked that once," and then after that, you just kind of let them all out. You know what I mean? There'd be like 3, 4 of them in a song. Like, oh, sorry, but it's cool because in 50 years down the line, we'll look back on this and be like, "Oh, that's that era where he was cracking his voice." It's just like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's all just
Man, and every artist has it, man. Every artist has a thing where like they get in a certain bag, and it's I think it's important, but it's hard for me to listen to as much as I love the music on the Morning America record. Like it's whenever I hear that part specifically, I'm like, man, that's not my favorite thing.
mm.
It's such a blessing and an honor to share a conversation like this with someone as amazing as Slug, because people all over the world tattoo his words and his face and his album covers on their body. And they listen to his music when they have children, or when somebody dies, or when they're trying to get sober, or when they go through a divorce, or when they're celebrating something. And that's also the case with my music and most of the people that I talk to on this podcast in one way or another. But it's not just how incredible these people are, but the connection that I have with them. and that we ultimately have with you who support and listen to what we do. I hear over and over, and what makes me happiest is when I hear somebody say, "I've never talked about this publicly before. I've never talked about this like this," or "Nobody's ever asked me that before." Because I know that that comes from the fact that we're out here living in the world and we're trying to do it in a way that has meaning and where we're following our dreams and connecting with people, but also we share that and we share that journey together. So the moments when Slug was becoming him and developing the way that he offers his gift to the world, I was a big part of that, and he was that for me. We were doing that together, and so there's a way that we connect that only we can. And it's crazy. Like I listen to when people say, "What is your podcast about?" I always point to the episode with Vinny Paz because Vinny and I existed in the same world for years and politely just avoided each other until he opened the door. He broke the ice. And I talk about that when he and I talked. And our conversation on a podcast is like 2 hours long, like most of them are. And about 20 minutes in, he starts very openly and sincerely weeping, and he cries through a lot of the episode. And I cry on most of these episodes too. And I titled that episode "The Wise Soul of Vinny Paz" because in that he shows and shares so much with all of us about what it means to go through tragedy and make art out of that tragedy, and then the openness to actually be able to heal publicly and how powerful that really is. And that all is connected to our relationship with you who listen to us. You gave us the ability to do that over the years because you've always supported us, and that's what matters to me more than anything, more even than how dope the music is. Just comparing it to other music, it's that the culture, the connection, and the relationship. That part is sacred, and also the way that we share that has to be sacred too. That's what I've learned from doing this over all these years. And so I say all that to say that when we started out, podcasting and social media and the platforms, the streaming services, all that came with a promise that it was going to really be a new, open, free marketplace of ideas and conversations. Like you could follow us directly, and then we could post stuff, and you would see it, and we'd be able to comment and talk to you. None of that existed when we started doing this. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just revolutionary enough that we had an independent record label. But you still had to be on some kind of label, you still had to do all of that. You still had to give interviews and wait for your album to come out to be able to express and give your message to people. So we thought social media and streaming services and podcasting and all that was gonna be this new opportunity, and in some ways it is, but in some ways it's really not. What we've learned about them, and also the fact that they've been bought by incredibly wealthy corporations and people, is that they've become part of this bigger corporate kind of structure where the idea is it doesn't matter what quality of stuff is being put out into the world and what the message really is. It's just about quantity. Like, we just want as much tonnage of human attention as we can so that we can sell that power to others, whether it's in marketing or like, so you follow me on social media. In order for you to really see my post, I either have to pay them, or I've got to let people argue on my posts, or I've got to, gossip, or it's very rare that we can just put goodness into the world and you're even going to see it. So what we've done and what so many others are doing, and people are really getting hip to the fact that you cannot depend on social media or streaming services or even podcasting or whatever. You can make the stuff you want, but to actually make it help it reach the people that want to listen to it, a lot of times you've got to go through a bunch of stuff that we as independent creators, we do this to avoid all of that. And a lot of times we do this to provide an alternative to that. So what we're realizing is how important it is for you to go to our website and have platforms that we own and that we curate. So if you go to brotherali.com, you're going to see all of my music. There's write-ups and history and context about all the music we've released. You're going to see videos. You're going to see interviews. You're going to see all the stuff about the podcast. You're going to see the small batch merchandise things that we've done. Uncle Sam Goddamn jackets and shirts and the small, like, intimate collections of music that I've done since being completely independent and actually owning my own platform now, stuff that you might not even know exists. But you're also gonna be prompted to sign a mailing list. I hate giving my email address to people. I feel why you might be resistant to that. But if you give me your email, I'm just gonna talk to you a few times a year when I have something really big that I wanna make sure you know about, that you might wanna be part of, that might be of benefit to you. And then if you go to the part of the website in the section called join, you'll see that we're continuing the community that we've been building over all these years in what we call a caravan. And there's different ways that you can get down with that. There's a $100 level every month where we really, that's like doing the VIP. You know, if you go to our shows and do a VIP experience, you hang out with us, we perform for you, we have intimate conversations, take pictures together, all that stuff. That top tier is like being a VIP perpetually. Like we have a Slack channel. It's a small community. We keep it limited and exclusive. And like we have real life on life interaction over the past year with people in that group. And there's people from different walks of life that would never know each other if they didn't weren't part of that caravan and part of that group. So we have that way of doing it. And I think there might be openings there. We, like I said, we want it to be very intimate. And so it's not unlimited. It's spaces, same thing that we do with VIP at shows. But we also have a $5 level. And at $5, we've got all kind of stuff that you can't get anywhere else. So there's all of these, videos and music and beats and sections from these podcasts. Like I talked to Chris Calico on the podcast, and it's an amazing conversation. But there's a whole part of that conversation where his wife, who's his manager, shout out to Crystal. Crystal came in and we had a whole conversation about our families and mental health and our journeys and our relationships. Super dope. That's not for everybody. I didn't want to share a moment like that. They did that knowing that it was part of the podcast. I didn't like sneakily record it, but that's not for everybody. That's for the people that are really tuned in, an intimate moment like that. So that's the kind of stuff that's there. There's a whole part of this conversation with Slug where he does a really deep dive on the kind of narrative of their new album. There are parts of conversations on there that are just not for everybody, along with the speeches and videos and live footage and all type of dope stuff, and I update it regularly. There's also Ask Me Anything episodes where people challenge me. It's a really dope experience. And if the people who support what we do were to go there and to join, even at that $5 level, even the basic people that listen to us on a regular basis and have benefited from what we do, we would be completely independent. We wouldn't need social media. We wouldn't have to depend so much on these streaming services. And it would give us the ability to just really invest in what matters the most to us and to offer that. You gave us the ability to do that when I was still touring all the time. But now I live in Istanbul. We're in a different phase of life. You're in a different phase of life. We still are going to tour and still do all of that. But what we're really building here is the opportunity and the platform of our own that we control to really further this bond that we have built with each other over the past couple decades and to build this thing into the coming decades. So means a lot to me. You know what I'm saying? So if you go to brotherali.com, go to that join section, sign the mailing list, that part's free. But get down with this caravan and just give it a shot. Like if you do it for a couple months, you're paying $5 a month. Like it's not a huge, for the price of a cup of coffee. But for real, like it's a very beautiful thing that we're doing together. We're grateful that you're part of it. Back to the episode with my man Slug. There are certain moments that really bring things out of people. When I listen to this record, I think about the moment, of specifically in 2020 and living in a world that seems like it's at war with itself, living in a country that feels like it's at war with itself, and living in a city that was and is and remains really at war with itself. This is music made in South Minneapolis at the time that the police killed George Floyd and the to burn down the police precinct, and people are out together on a bridge protesting, and somebody drives a truck through it. And then there's all these conversations even within the music community, and you got people booking and canceling Dave Chappelle, and like just it's a war. It's an entire war going on the cultural front and on the political front. And the idea of you as the role that you're in now, it feels as though there was a particular perspective and type of wisdom that you're offering on the record that I feel in the title. I feel it in all of the songs. And so I wonder if you could describe, what does the title of the record mean to you? If you were to talk about the perspective that you have on this album particularly, how would you describe it?
Obviously, living in South Minneapolis, for listeners who don't know, in case I never spoke about it, I don't live that far from where George Floyd was murdered. And I would wake up in the mornings after to find large pieces of ash in my yard from, the neighborhood burning down over there near Longfellow, by the precinct, because it wasn't just the precinct they burnt down, but
Right.
they burnt down a lot of when we say they, we are not entirely sure who they are, but they burnt down a bunch of shit.
Mhm.
And like you stated, Minneapolis music arts community basically um, went into a space where people were being held accountable for just the way people been living, the way people been acting and treating each other. You know what I'm saying? And so there was a lot of this is aside from the George Floyd thing that was going on, but there's this other thing going on uh, in the community where people are realizing things about our environment, about this environment that has been created. And I don't think that was even just a Minneapolis thing. Same with the George Floyd thing. Like a lot of cities were going through similar things at the same time. And now in hindsight, it's kind of almost like poetic and beautiful that people were crossing a new line into awareness of who they are and how they treat others, et cetera. So with the Twin Cities going through that and watching a lot of people, friends, um, people close to me, and even by proxy, people being upset with me, watching this all go on and listening and seeing all the trauma being exercised, feeling my own stuff coming up out of myself from my own
Mm,
youth. You know what
mm,
I'm
mm,
saying?
mm,
Like
mm,
it's
mm.
like there's a lot, and I'm sitting here in August starting to write a record,
Right.
and that is important to this album, definitely. Oh, let's not forget, we were like in the middle of lockdown. We were still cleaning off our groceries. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
so it's like,
Right.
so the very first song, okay, speaks to all of that in the sense of like, look, we're all going through a lot of shit right now. And I don't
Mhm.
mean that like a bumper sticker. I mean, everybody's
Yeah.
really going through it. And sarcastically, tongue in cheek, I'm gonna try to figure out how to take this music that Anthony just gave me. It feels very optimistic but realistic. And how am I going to speak to what I'm feeling right now? And that is just try to provide myself with this concept that things are gonna be okay. And really, I did find out later after writing it that really what I was writing to was my kids,
Mm.
because I have to be a person who under weight, just like you or anybody else, under the weight that we're under in this moment, you still have to represent what and how to move for these kids who are watching you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I wrote to that, and I did it in a way that I'm aware I got to make Ant like this song. And so I'm writing it in a way that has got a lot of what we'll call dad jokes for now. We'll refer to them as dad jokes. There's dad jokes, and I smoke weed in the shower, and things are going to be okay, but really the nuts of that song is just like, hey, like no matter how bad this is, like I'm going to stay grateful that I'm here. I'm happy to be here with you right now. Everything's gonna be okay. Even if it ain't, you know what I'm saying? Even if it ain't, I have to convince myself things gonna be okay. I have to believe in something. Um, and that was the jump off for the project. And so after that
Mm.
song was created, Ant was like, "I like it, so let's make an album." And that's when he started feeding me beats one at a time. But that being my jump off and me being like, "This is the album we're going into, and it's gonna start optimistically," it gave me this agency that felt great going into whatever, he handed me next. Like, it was a great way for us to
Right.
start because having done that, now I was able to go in and start actually unpacking some of the that maybe wasn't okay. You know what I'm saying? It was like after having already not if we'd have did it the other direction, it would have been harder to come back and be like, "Oh, after all that, how do I wrap this up in a optimistic way?" You know what I'm saying? Starting with the optimistic thing, I think was a great way for me to like go where I felt like I wanted to go, which I didn't even know yet where it was gonna go. Once it started going though, I realized, oh, the narrative here is not I I would used to write songs that were like from the perspective of somebody who wasn't me.
Right.
Oh, here's a song from the perspective of a cop, or here's a song, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
And
yeah.
and
Yeah.
and now that I've kind of outgrown those like, ninth grade creative writing tricks, now I'm really trying to figure out how to provide that narrative without having to pretend like it's from somebody else's perspective.
Mhm.
How do I provide that from a real, honest, genuine, in front of you space? And so I was able to just kind of like really go on different limbs, not to be like, this is what it's like to feel this, but more so, this is what it's like for me to see
Yeah.
you feel this, or
Yes.
for me to see another person feel this. And that opened up the whole thing for me and the album title, yes, is it's intentional. It's like that's kind of what the album is about. Is like me and you right now. You're in Turkey, I'm in Minneapolis, and we're on the internet talking to each other, and this is a moment that we're sharing, but
Mhm.
our versions of this moment are going to be different when we walk away. That car ride that we took, it was a beautiful moment that we shared, but our versions of that moment are not the same. They were
You're right.
different realities. You know what I'm saying? And obviously I'm influenced by pop culture and Marvel and and space movies because I love that stuff and I believe in that stuff. And again, this all comes back to having something to believe in, right? So this album is kind of really about belief. You know what I'm saying? Like it starts off about hope, but as it gets going, it's about belief. It's about, hey, what do you believe in? And can you believe in all of it? Can you believe in yourself? You know what I'm saying? Because if you can accomplish those things, then I do feel like you can find the empathy or the ability to resonate, those things that do allow you to live forever.
Yeah.
Those things that do allow you to be a source of energy that can go even after yours burns out. You know what I'm saying? And I talk a lot about art and how art is the way to live forever. You want to live forever? Make art. Make some art. I don't care if you suck at it. Make it. Give it to somebody. You know what I'm saying? Make a little sculpture. Give it to somebody. You know what I mean? Because that is how you live forever, is to create something out of nothing that you can hand to another person. And then if you also add that to being able to deliver the again, the feelings, the empathy, the ability to resonate with each other, like that all of that is part of living forever. So that way you exist in every reality.
I'm saying like and when you talk about that moment, that was a moment like when we talk about the what happened culturally and what happened in the arts community where it started with people telling like sharing things that had happened to them in the art community and around in and around the art community. And they were just, I mean, it was like wide open floodgates. And, for people who are victimized, traumatized, abused in certain ways. Like such an important part of that is that people they never get a chance to be heard. Their truth never gets recognized. But then what happened for most people in that moment was the people that were saying something publicly, like people were either quiet or they were attacking and distancing themselves from other people. Like that was the majority of like people making statements was like, I distance myself from this person and I'm not with this person and I'm not with this person. And I remember at that time that your response was like, I love everybody that's sharing what they have to say right now. Just for the record, I love these people. I love this group of people. I love it. So like your response was really opposite of what most of the public responses were. Where you're saying like, I have care for all of the people involved here, and there were people that were really dissatisfied with you for that. And it feels to me like the idea of the album is like, man, so many different reality like everybody there are as many realities as there are people trying to do this just be a human being and make it through life that like where everybody is coming from we have to start from the premise like if we're all if I'm human and they're human and I know that I have a lot of struggles and challenges and blind spots, I have to start from the perspective that this person probably is a beautiful soul who's been through a lot and is trying to do good. And whatever mistakes they're making, the best thing that we can do is assume that they're making them in good faith. Like that's what I took from the title of the record. Like, am I projecting or is that am I in the
No,
right
you're not
ballpark?
you're not projecting, I don't lead with that
Mm,
because I also want people to be able to read into
mm,
even the title for how it is with them. But you're definitely not projecting, you're in the ballpark, trying to think of one of the one was something that was said to somebody once, and it might have been me saying it to somebody. Um, and I like the way it sounded, but it was a younger person, and they were talking about I'm gonna paraphrase and just say haters,
mhm,
people that were mad at him, and I was like, "Yo, but like, look, man, those people that you think are your enemies, or you think are against you, or you think don't have your best interest in mind. Let's put it like that. Don't base the way you see them on what they wish for you. Don't base the way you see your opposition. Don't base it on what your opposition wishes for you.
mhm,
Try to understand what they wish for themselves. View those people and try to see it through the lens of what do they wish for themselves. And if you can find a way, if that's what it takes for you to fully humanize them as much as you humanize yourself, I feel like you're gonna have a easier time talking to them, maneuvering with them, understanding them, being able to like not allow it to bleed into how you see yourself.
mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Because oftentimes I think that that puts things at like a stalemate, a standstill, because I could say or do something and then be worried about how you took it and then use how you took that to feel how I feel about what I just said to you. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Or in the same regard, I could hear you say something to me, and instead of viewing it as your opinion, it can bleed into, oh, this is how people see me. You know what I'm saying? And that and
Mhm.
that and that starts to I think that could chip away at you, man. That can make you less proactive. That could take away your inspiration. That could take away certain things that I think that, there's nothing good that can come from that. If you're gonna help people, or
Yeah.
if you're gonna maneuver around people, you gotta be a person.
Yeah.
You can't be a half a person. You know what I'm saying? You gotta be a whole person.
Yeah.
But you also gotta see these people as whole people. You can't see them through a lens of how they see you. That's not how
Right.
it's supposed to work. You know what I'm saying?
That's not what defines the person. The way they relate to you isn't who they are.
Yes. Just
That's
just
just
yo,
your experience of a person, but that's not the whole of the who the human being is.
and that's something I've had to you know, learn over time, specifically in this industry, let's say,
Mhm.
in rap, because people have always had preconceived notions or just straight up opinions about who I am as an artist, or about
Right.
what my songs are like, or who my audience is. I'll be judged on all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And I will always try to look back at that person and not judge them based on the fact that they feel that way, but just see them as the person they are and understand, well, why do they feel that way? Because oftentimes, man, it comes from insecurity is a pretty pure thing. So I'm not going to judge you for being insecure about something. I'm not going to judge you for
Mm.
being angry about something. I'm not going to judge you for being happy about something. You know what I'm saying? It's like, these are your feelings. I'm not here to tell nobody that their feelings are wrong, and I'll be damned if I'm letting anybody tell me mine are incorrect. You know what I'm saying? We can hash through our feelings, and we can see each other's feelings and find that compromise, that space, but I can't be like, I can only get along with you if you change your feelings. Like, that's just not a thing, you know?
And it means a lot for you to say that, brother, because in that time period, and specifically in the arts community, you were the primary target for a lot of things that, to me, it felt like that weren't under your control, weren't your doing. But like the idea of like that was also a time of tearing down symbols. You know what I mean? That like certain people or certain institutions become symbols of something that is like, okay, that people are really finally expressing or having the opportunity to express very real pain with with a certain scene or with a certain societal response. And there was a certain powerful feeling about being able to attack the symbol of that thing. Like there's a line you said in one of the joints in Eventide, we lit the bridge on fire just to feel it as it burns. And there's a West African proverb. They say, like, if the youth aren't initiated into the village, they'll burn it down just to feel the warmth, because like they people need warmth. It's a right. It's a necessary thing. And so if people for whatever aren't feeling that, then that's one of their responses. And so like essentially like if this is the response to what happened in that time, is to say like, man, just to really affirm the humanity of everybody involved. You know what I mean? Is something that I think is really profound and really beautiful, and there's like a deep sense of love and service underneath it. At no point in the record, in no point in listening to this album, do I hear any type of defensiveness or revenge or vengeance or get back, or like it doesn't feel like, well, now I got the mic. You know what I mean? It really feels like this is where I'm at. This is what I'm learning. This is what I have to share. This is my response. And it feels like very universal and healing.
Well, here's the flip side to all that, and I appreciate you saying all that. That means a lot to me. Um, because I
Cause I
didn't.
kind of, cause there's a part of me that I'm sorry, but there's a part of me that as your friend and as somebody that that really feels like your younger brother, there's a part of me that's like, come on, man. Like, come on, man, pop off, like bust your gun at least once. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
And there's none of that. And it's very beautiful. You know what I mean?
I I didn't feel the need to bust any guns, and I'm gonna and let's I want to speak to that. Okay, so you had the murder of George Floyd and
Mhm.
the uprising that occurred because of that, as well as the conversations that were occurring because of that. Um, and then you had we'll say kind of like the call out sessions that were going on in the arts community. Like you said, first it started off with people being seen, and then it kind of became and listen, man, I'm not above. I want to make this clear. I'm not above feeling the way that a lot of people were feeling in general. I know that. You know what I'm saying? Like we all hurt. And when something pushes that part of you that hurts, when something pushes on your bruise,
Mhm.
you want to react. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like I recognized and understood how it went from people speaking about their experiences to the people who weren't necessarily speaking about their experience anymore, but were standing up for or and reacting to having that bruise pushed. So it's bigger than it looks, because shitty behavior, abuse, these are things that are prevalent in all of society. So we all got a voice when it comes to that. You feel me?
Mhm.
And so watching all that, feeling it, um, the lockdown, these things all inform it, but also, like, what else informed it was seeing the people who came together based off of these tragedies,
Mhm.
the people who came together based off of the George Floyd, the way the community showed up and showed out was inspiring.
Mhm.
The way that people were suddenly making moves to try to create spaces and situations and help so people could feel more welcome and have more voice or in the arts
Mhm.
community. You know what I'm saying? Like that was beautiful. The fact that I spent more time with my children during that lockdown than I ever have in my history of being a father,
Mhm.
and being able to bond and build with. I was running a, a little school for the distance learning, just being a part of all of that, and being present, watching my son learn how to read, and also being a part of him learning how to read and watching math unfold for him and the understandings and just being present for all of that. All that's on this record.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of there's the experiences that we've been talking about that have mostly been kind of like on the sad feeling side, but there was a lot also on the good feeling side too. And there it is, man. That's what makes us. The fact that even when you're going through it, there's another side to it. You know what I'm saying? And that is two different realities just within you. And so I feel like maybe that is how somebody like me doesn't want to make a diss record or get revenge or slide in a little stinger line here and there. You know what I'm saying? It's like because
Right.
I'm like, you know what? I don't really need to. I don't feel the need to do that because I'm just over here trying to be me. And I am not a whole person. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not trying to speak from a place of enlightenment with any of this. I want to make sure that's
No.
clear. It's like I am
No, no,
still
no.
a
Yeah, it
work
doesn't
in
have that feeling
progress. You
at
feel
all.
me? Yeah, yeah, okay.
Mhm.
But as this work in progress, I'm excited about the prospects of what this work is going to become eventually when it's finally time to frame it and put it on the wall. I'm really excited about what that is. You know what I mean? And I know that all of this experience, all of these realities that I'm experiencing are all a part of that painting, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and you do offer counterpoints. Like, you do offer, like, also consider this. Like, for as much as you're, listening and considering and really and honoring, you also have things to offer as well. It's, one of the joints you have a line that's like, "You don't wanna hear my voice, but you force yourself to listen. You have to check to see if I'm talking about you. I promise I've never sang a song about you. Even now, I'm not talking about you." You know what I'm saying? Like, I felt like that was, like, a really, like, "Man, I promise, man, like, this is not about you." But then, like, I actually made note of these lyrics. I wish I had more time to
I
sit with
love
the
that
record.
line. Thank you for calling out that line. That's one of my favorite lines on the album
No,
because
because
it's
there's
just
forever people that think that a song is about them. Like, and I've known that. Like, I've known people that are like, "Man, that dude is dissing me on the new record." I'm like, "I don't think he knows who you are." You know what I mean? Like, it's happened. You're somebody that, because of the way that you tell stories and the way you create characters that might be representative of, archetypes. Like, you might not be talking about a specific person, but it's like this is a particular archetype.
it is and you're right about the archetypes, and it's always been like that. You know, we grew up dissing the invisible rapper.
Mhm.
You know, it was like that's how you got better at rapping is you talked about the rappers that weren't as good as you, but you were never talking about a specific rapper. And that's not to say some people haven't engaged in direct beefs, but with me, you know, the only person I ever really went heavy on my whole career, the only individual that I ever went heavy on was my father.
Mhm.
And I regret that. And that's how I know I would regret going heavy on anybody.
Mhm.
You feel me? I would regret going in on anybody in a song. Now, there's definitely things that are inspired by situations that have occurred when me and another person enter each other's Venn diagram. You'll be inspired to talk about a situation
Right.
that is individual based, but I don't want to make songs that are, you know, I always used to say the only person I'm allowed to hurt with my pen is myself. Uh, and I learned that from hurting my dad with my pen. See what I'm saying? Like when I realized that I had hurt his feelings with some of the shit I said on record,
Mhm.
I was like, well, I'm never doing anything even remotely like that again. You know, even right now, I'm not talking about you because I'm not. You know what I'm saying? Like even that I loved that line when I wrote it because I always just I didn't know how to articulate that in a rhyme.
Mhm.
And here I was able to I rhymed it against itself. I said the same couple of words in a row, like how rappers were doing it like in 2004. I did that and it felt great because I'll never get to do that either. So it was like to have an excuse to do that and to say that. Whew, never have to say that again, hopefully.
It's dope, and then what comes after it, "I wish that this was more than a gesture. Wish I could make your everything better. I wish that I could tether it together for connection. Look at your reflection if you're looking for redemption." Dude, you're writing and you're rhyming on this record. Like, I think you're at the height of it, man. Both like songwriting, but then also vocal performances and the way that you're like spit, like as an MC, as a songwriter, super ill. Like, of course, the fortunate found shelter from the weather, but it still feels like the storms might live forever. maybe take a little time to put commas in your sentences. Maybe we can find a common sense of direction. So, like, that's a beautiful statement and a beautiful sentiment, but also the whole thing about put some commas in your sentences, like common sense. Maybe we could find a common sense of direction. I'm saying, man, like the writing, both at like as a songwriter and also as an MC, is really incredible on this record, man. Like you've always had joints that are very like, I'm just gonna have fun with words. I'm just gonna, this is like an exercise in MCing for a minute. But on this album, you do those things at a really high level, and they're still completely within the theme and the vibe and the message and the type of reflection and the type of thinking. Wake me up in 2072. Are you ready to die or are you ready to do? F the cops, f the judges, and the referees, true, and especially you, but not you, right? You know what I'm saying? It's funny, man. I had, like, man, that's one of my favorite lines, man. I had, this really dope, Adrienne Marie Brown, super dope, author and thinker, and like, and she wrote a book as a very like radical, progressive person called "We Will Not Cancel Us," where she talks about, the ways that these initial kind of feelings that like, okay, because of social media, because of the environment we're in, now we have time to give air and give space to some very real truths that secrecy and silence and suppression has has held in place so that certain types of abuse could go on. So airing those, there's a virtue in that, but she talks about the fact that these things can spiral out of control and can become related to the way that we've been raised in policing and like a prison culture. So for people that are abolitionists and don't like prisons and don't like the police and don't like, we're still being raised in that environment. So once we discover that wrongs have been done because of the water we've been swimming in and the wave that we've been evolved as people, we can start reacting in these like punitive policing ways too. And so that's what I'm saying. Like there are all these like wisdom things that have been living in my head and heart during the course of this stuff, that the way that you're putting them as an artist, as an MC, is really dope.
You're calling out
That
the
was one
good
of mine.
lines too. I kind of figured you would hear all the good ones because you rap, and also you know Anthony and myself really well. But like I love so far I love all the lines you're calling out. Those are some of my favorite ones.
Shepard Albertson, like, are we like? It's not a secret that that's print, right?
Nah, I don't think that's a secret. I mean, I guess it's a secret to anybody who don't know. Yep, Shepard Albertson, he's beautiful. He murders that song. Like so good, and it's a great way to get going because it's the second song, and so
Hmm.
to have him come in and you don't see it coming because I start the song, and so it's like, okay, here we go, and it's cool because we split my verse in half and do one half of it on the phone and then the other half of it in person, and then when it gets to the hook and his voice comes in, it takes a second. If you don't know, you might never realize that that's print. You know what I mean? Like I love that.
Yeah, and it's amazing just how multifaceted and incredible he is.
Man.
And some of his best, like for as amazing as an MC as he is, and he's a really dope producer, and his podcast is dope, and he writes books, and for like what you are in the Twin Cities, like he's one of those guys in Columbus. Like he's the one that people look to for like, man, it's possible. Look what Al's doing. Look what Print did. And but man, I feel like his singing has always been such a hidden treasure. And
Oh
I mean, he
yeah.
had the Adventures in Counterculture album where he sang a lot, but some of his best singing has been on atmosphere songs.
Well, I'm grateful. He blesses us every time he sings on one of our tracks. You know, there's something about he's got for me, it's like early soul when like it's in that blues to early soul transition. His voice reminds me of like he could have been a jazz singer. He could have been a blues singer. He could have been a soul singer. He's got a voice and you don't even hear that voice anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like it's almost he almost sounds like a sample.
Yeah.
He almost sounds like you got an old record doing this. You know what I'm saying? I love that about what he does because then he applies it to contemporary sounding sounds and noises, 808s and you know what I mean? So when you put those two together, I think it creates a version of blues soul that it touches me before I even know what he's saying. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
it's like almost like a Nina Simone, how you will get touched before you even know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
And it feels weird to compare one of my friends to Nina Simone, so take it how you will, but that sound of, like, there's pain in this voice, and I hear that before I hear even what these lyrics are, and Print has that. He's got that pain in his voice when he uses it like that, and it blows me away because it's one of my favorite sounds of all the sounds
Yeah.
that I know.
Yeah, 'cause it is there is a lot of pain, but it's also very beautiful, and it's also very hopeful, and it's also just there's something really, like, masculine about it that's really beautiful. Like, it's a one of the things that I was gonna say is, like, the way that people talk about like, toxic masculinity, to me, like, that's not masculinity at all. That's just toxicity. Like, to me, like, masculinity is something that shows up in really beautiful ways, and there's moments of that in this particular album that I think are really important, and that's one of them. Like, that's one of the moments that there's something about, like, this is a man. This is, like, a dude with a big voice and muscles and, like, singing in this really beautiful way that's really vulnerable, and there's a lot of care there, and it's a very natural thing.
I didn't even say gospel, but that's what it is. Prince got a gospel voice, you feel me? Because it's like, it's able to.
It's blues and jazz and gospel, so it's black, so Blueprint is
Well, yeah,
black.
yeah, yes, Print has, like, a very black voice, you know what I'm saying? And but
Yeah.
it's like you nailed it when you said it's also hopeful because it is sad but also hopeful. It's human,
Mhm.
but it's looking for something larger. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like I feel like still I will. The Lonely Rose. That one will always
Oh, that's my
that will
favorite one, man. Yeah,
it's
that's
it's
like
so amazing. You could have took me an ace off that song, and that song would have been just as good. You know what I'm saying? It's like so good. Like, ugh, I love it. I love that dude.
yeah, man. We've been doing the Travelers Podcast for over a year now, and it's really a major commitment. It takes between 10 and 20 hours every week to produce a podcast, schedule it, do all the logistics, all the technical stuff, the editing, the art, the posting, the copy, the write up, all that stuff. It's between 10 and 20 hours every single week. And so me and BK1 as like grown professional men with families and children, we need to have some sort of income to even justify putting that much work into something for a sustained period of time. So there's got to be some revenue generated. And we've been really fortunate that we haven't had to do the corporate sponsor thing. There's all kind of like services that advertise on podcasts that if you have an audience, and we're blessed to have an audience, but we haven't needed to do that. We've been with the Zakat Foundation from the beginning that I know and trust and feel good about. And then we've also had this partnership with BetterHelp, which is a corporation, but it's an online therapy platform, a network of thousands of trained professional licensed therapists. And because I live outside of America and I'm self-employed, that's how I access therapy. And so I've been really glad to share that. If you go to betterhelp.com/travelers, you can do their questionnaire and get into therapy, and you'll get a discount on your first month. And they also give us a commission. So that's a partnership we've been really blessed to have. And we have had some other um, sponsors, like people that I know from the community that have goods and services and, or corporations or organizations that I like and love. And they've supported the podcast for periods of time. But what we've noticed, especially lately, me and BK1, he's the producer on the podcast. He was my DJ for the first 10 years. We're partners in Travelers Media, and he's also just a dope producer on his own. And BK1 is coming on the podcast. That's coming very soon. So you'll finally get to hear more about his story and where he's coming from. But what we've noticed is that even with these sponsors that we love, whenever they are contributing money to make this podcast work for us, we, even if it's subconsciously, we want to deliver numbers to them. So we're playing the numbers game. And I know that if we have somebody like Cornell West or Ilhan Omar, or Slug, or someone like that, Immortal Technique, there are certain guests that I love very much and I share life with them and I'm very happy to have them. And if I have those people on the show, we're going to see a spike in numbers and I'm going to be able to deliver those numbers to the people that sponsor us. But the a lot of the conversations and a lot of the amazing people that I know don't have those type of platforms. And a lot of those my favorite conversations are episodes where we don't see a spike in numbers, but what we do have, no matter what's going on in a podcast, is a group of people that listen every single month. And that number is anywhere between two, or every single week, I'm sorry, but that number is anywhere between 2 and 3,000. So if there's no guest at all, if it's just me talking about Islam or answering your questions, or if we have a guest that I know not a lot of people know, we have between 2 and 3,000 people that will listen every single week religiously. And we know from the analytics that we're your top podcast. And me and BK were just talking about the fact that when we used to go on tour, we would put years and hours and months and days of work into creating our live show and the album and the videos and all the marketing and to get a room full of people to have an experience together. And we would do that all over the country, but we would come home and the like climax of it all was for us to play First Avenue. First Avenue was 1,500 people when we started doing it. So we would sell it out and then we got to do multiple nights. So maybe 2 nights in a row sold out 3,000 people. And then they renovated First Ave and now it's 2,000 people. You know what I'm saying? So 1 or 2 nights of that. And that was the climax for us to come home and have a room full of people on the same page at the same time with this message that we're bringing and the movement that we're bringing and the artists that we brought to open up for us. And it's just like that was what we were doing it for. And also, financially, it was sustainable for us and our families. What we realize is that with 2 or 3,000 people rocking with us every single week, even if there's no guest, we're basically selling out First Avenue every single week. And that's very powerful. And we shouldn't need to think about who we have on the podcast based on, is this going to cause a spike in listeners so that we can deliver those people to a sponsor, even though we love those sponsors, so that we get people to come in the door or come, click in the podcast and then tell you about somebody else so that you hopefully go spend money with them. So we're really, really doubling down on the idea of having this community that we call a caravan. And if you go to brotherali.com in the join section, that's where it all is. And giving those people intimate experiences and sharing that. And it's not a brand new concept. I mean, this is something that creatives, I don't like the word creative, but artistic people who share and connectors, how's that, are doing with their group of listeners. And so we have these sections and these different, ways to connect and different price levels and things like that. But the reality that we've discovered is that if the people that listen to this thing regularly, or the people that have benefited from what we've done and have been part of what we do, would join, even at that $5 level, we would not have a financial care in the world. We would be in a situation where, we're not going to be getting rich, but that was never the goal. The goal is to be free to explore ourselves and our community and our culture and our spiritual traditions and our organizing and the good that we see and want to share in the world, and to be able to just connect with people based on that, and to not have to worry about delivering human hearts and minds and souls and aspirations and experiences and dreams, to not have to deliver that to somebody else who's just trying to make money. You know what I'm saying? But to really share that very real connection with you. So I'm asking you, and I'm also offering to you a way to continue this bond that we've been building through this podcast, through the music, the learning series, the lectures, the live shows, the merch, the albums, all that stuff. If you go to brotherali.com in the join section, get down with the Caravan. If everybody just did it at that $5 a month level, me and BK would just be completely free to provide to the best of what we have to offer to you, and to share that with you for the rest of our lives, which is our sincere intention and desire. So head to brotherali.com, check that out. Back to the episode. There's a song called In My Head. Is that about psychedelics?
No, that's a that that's a great guess, though. That song's about visitation,
Hmm.
like alien visitation.
Uh-huh.
It's about, man, I'm impressed that you've never had to sit and listen to me, like, ramble about night terrors and how, um, I used to convince myself that night terrors were actually, alien visitations in order for me to calm down and get to a space of exiting the night terror. Because
Mhm.
I've suffered night terrors for pretty much most of my life. Funny enough, it rarely happens on tour. It's like all of my years of touring, it's rarely happened. It generally has to be my own bed for it to occur. Um,
Mm.
but you know, as a joke, I used to just I shouldn't say a joke, but as a way to, I guess, you know, reconcile it to myself, I would tell myself that it was alien visitation. But the song itself goes further to talk about how all of it, alien visitation, night terrors, it's all the government. You know, I end it talking about how it's the government somehow, you know, controlling my brain from a pyramid somewhere. But even that goes to speak to stuff that I am, you know, to me, this is a song I thought I should have written a long time ago and never figured out a reason to. There was never an excuse to. And then Anthony gives me this beat that's got like these different sounds in it. There's like a organ drum going on in there, and then there's some hand percussions going on in there, and then there's this like synth that I don't know if he likes it when I say this, but it reminded me of Scooby Doo. It goes
Scooby Doo music's dope though.
right, and so you know, I suddenly am like, oh, maybe I could finally write about how the night terrors connects to alien visitation in a way that doesn't sound like I'm overtly being dark or serious. If I do it to this
Mm,
Scooby Doo beat,
mhm.
let's see what it pulls out of me. And I loved what it pulled out of me. And not only that, but the Scooby Doo part, you know, at the end of Scooby Doo, the bad guy always turns out to be some white dude. And so at the end of this song, the bad guy turned out to be the government. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of like, to me, it was like a perfect way for me to deal with this topic without sounding like I'm overdoing it or taking it too serious. You know, it was lighthearted kind of. But it's always been an actual topic for me. I mean, you know, I've got children that also experience night terrors. You know what I'm saying? My father had them, you
Mm.
know, and you know, now that the song's about to come out, I'll finally explain to my kids that those are not night terrors. Those are aliens, and they're just coming to hang out in your bedroom and look at you while you sleep, bro. Just go back to sleep. I mean, truthfully, I don't even think they come into my bedroom. It's just something that I would use to logically explain to myself what this phenomenon was that I was experiencing.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? It's like a thing that even as a younger kid, I would tell myself, that's not a monster in the corner of my room. It's not a demon. It's definitely not a human. It's an alien.
Mhm.
And therefore probably giving the experience that I'm having, um, some form of credibility, specifically for a kid, but giving it a credibility that makes it more important, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because an alien coming into my room, that's important. That's a big deal. I was chosen to have this alien stare at me while I'm sleeping. You know what I'm saying? I tried to put actual sounds of me having a night terror in the song, and Ant
Uh,
wasn't feeling it. He wasn't feeling it.
man, I had one time I was going through a thing with my mom, and I was like having them. And a matter of fact, was when we were on tour on the God Loves Ugly tour when I was sleeping on Jaybird's floor, and like I would routinely wake Bird up in the middle of the night like screaming, and he would be like, "Yo, man." And then me and Aunt made a song about it called Sleepwalker, and the song says, "Somebody tell my mother that I died." It's like the chorus of the song.
I remember
And so
that.
we made the song, and before it came out, so like we came home from that tour and found out that my mom had like stage 5 cancer, but we made the song already. And so then she died, and Aunt was like, "This is a dope song. If you don't wanna," he's like, "I kinda don't think we should still put this song out." You know what I mean? Like, this has like a level of like meaning in your life, man, that like I don't know how to feel about. But he's like, "It's totally your call." And I'm like, "Man, let it go." You know what I mean? That's when I was like still in the phase of like nothing's private.
Yep.
If we can make a song about it, you have to. There was a time when I was like, any major theme in my life, there's got to be at least one song about it
Yeah.
at some point, and it doesn't matter how messy it feels or how like it's got to go out.
Do you still feel that way?
No,
No.
no,
Some stuff
yeah,
it's okay to keep some stuff back. I here's the thing. I wonder what could happen in my life now. There's got to be something, right? What would it take for me to not make a song out of it? Or I, I shouldn't say make a song, but like not release a song. Like what would it be? And I could see stuff to do with my parents. Yeah, I could see never putting out anything else that has to do with my parents. You know what I'm saying? Not for any other reason than um I said I think the things that needed to be said, and now, you know, now it's just time to live, you know? Like me and my mom get along really well. We have a great relationship. There's nothing else that I really want to like say about my father. There is something to maybe saying how much I did disappoint myself by hurting his feelings
mm,
through my music, because he was still alive when I said some of the stuff I said on record.
yeah.
And I didn't find out that it hurt his feelings till after he passed. One of his friends came and was like, "Hey, this song right here fucked him up," And I was just like, "Whoa." And so that I could see maybe presenting the idea of that as a writer, not so much making it about my father, but just about like maybe a song about, the the butterfly wings that happen when you write a song, how it can reverberate, how it can hurt people. You know what I'm saying? Like the things that you don't see.
Yeah.
They say zoom out, play it out, zoom out and play the film out. But there's parts of the film you're never gonna see until it's time to actually film it. You're never gonna realize, oh, a fly came into the shot. You know what I mean? It's like so maybe there's a song in there about that. That would be an interesting one to
And there's
write.
something really, with just kind of what we're talking about here, that specifically about writing about your dad, about an artist, and especially like a young man writing about their dad. I did the same thing, and like his wife actually pointed it out to him. Like he didn't catch it, and she showed it to him, and he never like confronted me about it, but he talked to my younger brother about it, and then later, like he died of suicide, and I have to like wonder, like, man, you a person that is ending their life, I'm sure they take account of, or they like do a scan at least of all the people in their life. What's it mean for this person? What's it mean for this person? And I'm like, man, when he got to me, was part of that feeling like, oh man, this guy doesn't need me. You know what I mean? Like this, like, he has these feelings about me, or he's relating to me in this way. So it's in there. But it's like, man, at the time that I said that, the things that I said and that I shared were true, and they felt true to me. And specifically for a man to be talking about his dad, it's like this is the ultimate like symbol of powerful authoritarian stuff in my life. And like that lesson of like it's possible to tell the truth about pain that somebody has actually inflicted on you or that you're experiencing. It's possible to tell that truth in a way that also unjustly hurts that and harms that person that you're telling your truth about. Like it's a great context to have in a moment like the one that created this album. Like, you know what I mean? Like there are times when in speaking your truth, it's not going, it will be messy. I also in that moment had a lot of anger that I vented. I just didn't do it in public, but I did like get our group of friends together and really express the hell out of it. And then the next day had to like talk to everybody like, "Hey man, I got like I really like went there yesterday and here's what I learned and I thank you all for making space for me in that time." You know, but it's one of those things that um that experience and the ability like we do have a thing as artists that like we have an ability to share the stuff that is going on with us that most people or just a platform and an opportunity that most people don't have. You know what I mean? So like the fact that we get to say this stuff and then we get to say it on stage and there's all these people in the audience singing along and like I've been heard the whole time I've been on stage, and I know how important that feels to me. So the fact that people wanna be heard, like, man, I understand that. There's a part of that, like, go ahead, make your record about this, you know? And I would also hope that our fathers could maybe hear that there's something in those records that we couldn't figure out how to say to them for whatever reason, that there that
I feel that. I feel like I didn't even know how to say it when I said it though.
mhm,
And I feel like that's the that's the key. Even though what I said was true,
mhm,
I was still juggling what it all was.
right,
And so it was really just one phase of my reality that I was speaking from, you know. And to put it into context, I grew up in a home where there was, abuse.
mhm,
Uh, my father was a young parent, he was married young, he was a teenager when he had me. My mom also a teenager.
mhm,
And to a kid, that is not what you see. You just see these grown-ups, these parents, these protectors. And so it wasn't until after he passed away that I actually really had to confront, okay, what are we talking about here?
mhm,
And that's when I go, my guy was 17, 18 years old. You know what I'm saying? It's like this is not a whole person. This was a person who didn't have who had a lot less of the tools that you kind of need in order to build a solid home.
mhm,
My parents were kids, you know what I'm saying? And so now that I've been able to reflect on that, it really eased a lot of the edge off of a lot of the things I was angry with him about because I look at it and go, well, I'm comparing him like let's say when I wrote Little Man,
yeah. Is that the song that
probably
he heard?
2000 that's the song that hurt him. Yes.
Okay,
Um
yeah.
2004 I probably wrote that. So I was 32 years old when I wrote that. You know, talking about a 22-year-old
Mhm.
father. You know what I'm saying? Talking about a father, you know what I'm saying? Talking about by 22 he had 2 kids already.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so it's like he was on his way to his 3rd kid, and here I am at 32. I saw my struggle. I went through what I went through as a young parent, but I'm comparing who I am at 32 in my life to who he was in this verse, and now in hindsight I see, oh, I was not even fully formed yet enough to really even speak on his situation. I was speaking from a very biased and very uninformed space, and that's the part that guts me. That's the part that I look at and go, okay, never again am I going to put anybody in that kind of position. Uh, you said something a minute ago that was kind of interesting to me, and if you don't mind, I want to rewind. But
Yeah.
you spoke about how your father passed and how he had to kind of just take stock of the different people in his life and how this was going to affect them. And one of the things that I wonder is if that part truly happens in a situation like his. I'm sure it's different for everybody, but I do think that oftentimes when you hit that space where you start to consider that as an option, you kind of have walked outside of the boundaries of thinking like that, and now you are thinking in a very, in a much more, I don't want to say claustrophobic, but you're inside of something when you get there. You're not so much thinking as
Mhm.
maybe for you, you would think in this more open way, but to project that on him or anybody else is a way to try to figure out or construct what you think happened in you guys' relationship. I think you got to be careful with that because I feel like you are weirdly taking a little bit of the credit. Not I shouldn't say weirdly, but you are, like, going, "Hey, it's possible that when he looked at me and him, it was just another reason for him to."
Mhm.
And I don't know that that's a I don't know that that's, I just can't I don't know that I agree with that way of thinking. I feel like giving agency to the person who makes the choices fully and you know,
Mhm.
not even not in a judgy way either. Like, I'm not judging anything that you said or that he did, but more so, I'll give that man his agency. This is what he felt like had to happen at this time. But I just don't wanna see you take any of that,
Yeah.
even a little bit of that, you know what I'm saying? Because I feel like I don't think that's beneficial to you, you know what I mean? And that's what matters right now.
Well, I think it's like, for me, the way that I try to look at it is like all of the all of the facts are all there together. You know what I mean? And like, yeah, I mean, he clearly like he struggled with stuff all his life, and it's like it's very apparent looking back. You know what I mean? And for me, like the way that that also frames everything with him, like even talking about him in therapy, it's like, man, I don't really have much other than sympathy for him. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's how he died. Like at the end of the day, he was just wanted to be out of this life so bad that he took himself out of it. You know what I mean? And I don't think that that's the reason, and I don't, but it is one of the considerations that, like, man, and I know that it was a long term thing for him, and for most people, it is. It's pretty rare that people have that impulse and then follow through on it the first time. Like, it was a long term thing for him, and his dad died like that. But it's one of the things that I think about that, like, man, it was something that I put out before him and into the world. Um, that's part of his experience. It's like it's part of the world that he chose to leave. Was the fact that I said those things to him in ways that I didn't know how to say it, and so I put it in music, and his wife actually had to decode it for him and tell him about. So, yeah, so no, I don't walk around blaming myself for it.
So, I see what you mean. While adding something to your plate or to your world, to your list of songs, to your letting things out, you inadvertently added something that also sat on his plate. And his plate was what it's all he had was his plate. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So it's like he inadvertently added those things to your plate
yes.
to begin with. Not to bring it back to what this album is about, but the key word there was for you guys specifically, it was inadvertently. You weren't trying to burden this person, you know?
Yeah, and those cycles of uneasy, unsettled, harm that hasn't healed, traumas, like those things, and the way that a lot of times they come out of us is like we end up playing with each other. And one of the main things that I think that a lot of us learn from that, and like certainly me and you share, is like it's possible for me to say something that feels completely justified and truthful to me in the moment, and not realize not only that the person that I'm talking about, it probably wasn't their intention to harm me, but they did. You know what I mean? It's like they're part of the same they're part of the same ecosystem of dysfunction and toxicity, and not to mention just what already is there in the human condition and everything else. All of the stuff that I'm railing against, they were shaped in that environment as well. So like to also talk about like, what Adrienne Marine Brown is talking about, where like, people respond and give voice to things that need to be spoken. And it's also possible that like in all things we have to be artful. And I don't mean art like making songs, but like we have to be very thoughtful and like really be as considerate as possible. And when we don't, it's understandable. It's understandable that like not everybody, and especially when you were saying like we didn't have the tools and that was your first time saying it, and some of the things that we're saying now are our first time saying them. it is part of the process. Like part of the process, even of healing, is that we're going to say things in ways that are still clunky, like, and that are
Yeah.
still clumsy. You know what I mean? And it is part of what comes around. This actually leads me to, like, Jay-Z said something really similar around the time that he was making 444. And one of the things that I wanted to say to you is this album reminds me a lot of 444, where you got this incredible artist that's been dope for a long time. And then something happens that I know he wouldn't have chosen. Like, he very publicly cheated on the most amazing woman in public life. You know what I'm saying? And and then she made a whole project about it, that was like highly celebrated. And then he came back making this just very beautiful album of self exploration and expression. And part of what he did on that record is talk about his dad, because he also very publicly was like, my father left me. That's part of why I am the person that I am. That's like was a very important part of his narrative, that my father left. So along with dealing with all this other stuff, my father left. Mom never had an abortion. Pops kind of did. Like, it's always there until the Black Album, and then he acknowledges that, like, you're a human being. But then on that 444 record, part of the revelation for him of that really horrible public traumatic and also private experience that he caused, you know what I'm saying? That led to him being able to heal so publicly. Like, there's a lot of I hear there's a lot of public healing in this record, in this album that you made. And it's one of the connections that I wanted to point out. And so this thing about dads, I think, is just kind of helping to bring that
That's
to the
interesting.
forefront.
I heard the 444 record. I didn't dig super deep into it. I just heard it and was like, "Yep, it's good." But I did hear in his voice that this was coming from a place of just with higher understanding of self than what I was prior, with him. Which is it's pretty impressive because he's always had a certain amount of, I guess, self reflection in his stuff. It's just that also that would always be at battle with how awesome he was too. You know what I'm saying? And so it was kind of like there'd be self-reflection, but my reflection
Mhm.
says I'm the coolest thing in the world. So here it is. Uh never really could relate to that part, but
Yeah.
but but with that said, I'll probably go back and listen to that record again. I found it on vinyl, which was weird because I didn't even know that thing came out on vinyl. It's probably a bootleg, but I'll bump it.
One of the main things about that album is not only the music itself, but also, like, they released a series of, like, short, almost like vignettes. Some of them are him talking, in conversation with other people. Some of it's about the making of the videos or the music or whatever. Like, there's one where they go to Jamaica to record Sister Nancy. But in one of those, he was really talking about all of the stuff that he said about his own father. And then at some point, him feeling like, I'm about to destroy my family and do to my children what I vowed I would never do. And he realizes, like, I didn't have the tools. And it's so funny that you said those exact words. And he was like, I'm realizing my father didn't have the tools either to deal with, like, what was going on in his life. So he left our family because
Right.
he didn't know how to be with us.
The healing on this album, unfortunately, is part of a longer process of healing on all my albums. It feels like, it's interesting to me because everybody it's almost like Ant will say this thing when someone's like, "Hey, how do you make it in this game? How do you?" His thing would be like, "Just don't quit. Just keep going, keep going, keep going because if what you're doing is good and genuine, it's going to work. It's just a matter of when somebody who's listening catches it."
Mhm.
Oftentimes you could be making amazing stuff, but if nobody is catching it, if the timing is wrong, it just doesn't work until that timing will eventually catch up to you. So he called it the audience will catch up to you. And I've heard him say this to younger artists. For us, there is a there are parts of what we do that we've been always doing. The dad rap, for instance, or the dad jokes, if you will. They've always been there. It's just that at one phase, it was a 25-year-old dad cracking this joke. but the corny jokes have always been a part of my rhymes. You know, if you go listen to Guns and Cigarettes, it's like it's off the Lucy Ford album. It's just a bunch of dad jokes basically.
Mhm.
They're younger dad
Yeah.
jokes, so they're kind of gross, and
Right, right, right. It's like young drunk dad.
yeah, yeah. And so the dad joke has always been a part of my rapping. It's always been one of my punchlines is to go for the low-hanging fruit kind of punchline. You know what I'm saying? And those are still here. The healing, the using this as some sort of catalyst to open myself up and heal something in myself. That's been a part of our music forever too. And you know, these parts are they are the tools that I got from my own father. Funny enough, because my dad was full of really bad, corny dad jokes. You know what I'm saying? And my dad was constantly healing. He was looking for, you know, he would get into a he he would throw himself into like exercising, and then he would exercise for like 6 months, and then after that he would decide to go to church, and then he would go to church for like this much time, and then after that he would go. He was looking for it. He was constantly healing too, you know, and a lot of who I am right now is a reflection of those things, you know. And I think honestly that's kind of that is, you know, maybe what I've been trying to do is to just outdo him while making him proud. And he ain't even here. And I'm still
Mhm.
just trying to outdo him. And I don't mean that in a like, I did better than you, dad, and throw it in his face way, but I mean more like, okay, he handed me the baton. Now let me run with it until it's time for me to hand it, you know? And so, you know, tying this to the Jay-Z record, all the stuff you're saying all resonates with me. I love it all because it's things I haven't heard anybody do with our music before. Um, but yeah, I see it, you know, and this record being written from August of 2020 through about, I would say, I don't remember exactly, but let's just say for the hell of it, we'll say from August 2022 to April 2021, the healing that I went through in that time, like, you know, like we already touched off on by some of the um environment, just like being here in Minneapolis during the George Floyd, being here in Minneapolis during the arts community, exercising the trauma and people, you know, being drawn into the light and all of that stuff. I won't go as far as to say that an empath or anything like that, but I'm very affected by my surroundings. I feel the things that are
Mhm.
around me. I'm very sensitive to what people are going through. And what happened was it helped actually open my mind up to remember things that I had forgotten about from my own childhood. You know, there was a lot of things that were like coming out, a flood of things that they could have came out anytime. It could have waited until anything, but
Mhm.
this was what happened to open that door. And so
Mhm.
that stuff's on the record too. You know what I'm saying? Like that stuff's on this album. Uh and that stuff informed this album as much as that other stuff did, you know? And so the healing is, I mean, maybe deeper and more entrenched because on this record I was healing things that I forgot about. I was healing things that I had hidden from myself. You know what I'm saying? I was healing things that were like, "Oh, that's something that's been tucked for so long that I'm not even realizing that it's affecting my relationship with my wife and my children today." You know what I'm saying? And so there's things of that nature on this album that I think I never dealt with before on my albums, you know? And I don't go super hard in the paint with any of it. There's no song about that topic, but instead it informs everything that I'm talking about on this project. Because the project's just one long song to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I wonder for you, this is something I'm just curious about. So there was a time like, okay, in the early and mid 2000s where like, you make a dope ass atmosphere album and then you see it show up in tour numbers, you see it show up in maybe, you get invited on a late night TV show or, Pitchfork doesn't totally diss it or they diss it because it's so good that they're like elevated hipsters by dissing this amazing art that you just made or trying to find the flaw. Like, what would do you even have a concept of like if this record were successful, like what would that even mean? Like, what would it mean that you just put out this amazing piece of art? Like you said, you might read comments. Like, do you even have an idea for what that might look like?
I don't think that it requires a lot of money. I don't think that what me and Anthony do, like even if you did take the money away from us, I don't know that that would take away our success. I know both of us to know that we will adapt to whatever it is we got to adapt to, and we will likely still make music together, and that music will still be successful for us because we'll still be like, yo, this one was fun. This one was, codes cracked. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I guess in a weird way, that's an extremely privileged place to be in. For artists that are trying to figure out how to be successful at this, I can't necessarily give you. I don't know the magic tricks. I don't know the secrets, but I could tell you that being able to do this and just be genuinely yourself and have the resources to do it. And I don't mean money, but just the time, the hunger, the partnership that I have, like all of those resources. That to me that's what success is. Me and this dude been making music together for how many years now? Like the first time we were together in a studio, I'm pretty sure it was 1995. So we're coming up, we're close to 30 years now. Like, how many, how you could probably count on four hands how many groups like that there are. Spawn was with us back in the day, but since 1998, it's been Anthony and me. So 25 years now, nonstop, Anthony and me. Like that's to me, that's the success. That's the success story inside of what we do. Because neither of us are like balling out of control. We got bills to pay. We pay our bills, but what we have is a catalog that we never sold. We kept it. It's ours. What we have is a friendship that we never sold. We kept it. It's ours. And as long as we got those two things, I think we're okay.
That's beautiful, man. I can't ask another question after that.
Uh, I appreciate you, man. This is a lot of time, and I know it's pretty late there. So thank you for hanging out in my basement. This is what I do anyway. As I come down here, I turn this mic on, I open up this computer, and then I try to figure out words that rhyme.
So very grateful to my friend, my brother, my homie, my inspiration, my teacher, my mentor, my co-collaborator, Slug from Atmosphere, for being so gracious with his time and his wisdom, and just for being Sean and just for sharing all that he has and all that he does in the world and in his music and also on this podcast. A reminder that if you go to brotherali.com in the join section and get down with the caravan at the even at the $5 level, there's an entire section of this talk that we had where he does a deep dive into the meaning and kind of the story of this new album. So all of that is at brotherali.com. And for everything Atmosphere, this new incredible album, and all of their merch and all of their tour dates, do not miss Atmosphere Live. If you've never seen them, or even if you've seen them 100 times, it's one of the best live shows in hip hop or in music in general. Do not miss Atmosphere Live. You can see all of that at their website, which is named by Slug, and it's atmospheresucks.com. But yeah, just really very grateful for this whole thing. Shout to Amna Mirza, to Mansoor Panawala, to all the people that contribute to the podcast. My man Last Word helps with a lot of the graphic design. My man Ant from Atmosphere did the music for this that we use as our theme song, which is my song called The Travelers from our 2009 album called Us. So you can go and check that out as well and check out everything that Ant is doing. And shout to BK1, who is the producer of the podcast, and also to the people that are friends of mine that listen to the podcast and give me their feedback. People like Ahmed Fahmi, and people like Shane Atkinson, and people like Imam Khalis Rashad and Aida Rashid, and people like Dan Chisholm, and like all the people that listen and give me their feedback. It really matters to me. It really all contributes to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. We do this every single week, and we love you beyond words. And we're very, very grateful to be doing this together. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.